Welcome to Not Parenting. This is Carrie. Let's get untangling.
So, Carrie, one of the really foundational concepts that I've gotten from you through the years, really right from the very beginning, that has helped me just feel much more steady and sturdy as a parent, is this idea that we access our knowing, our clarity, our faith, like our real steady rooted core of ourselves when we're resourced. So I know we're going to be talking about this idea of being resourced a lot in this episode. So why don't we start off by really breaking down what do we mean when we're talking about this idea of being resourced?
Yeah, I love this whole topic. And let me give you a little sense of how I got to what I like to share about it, which is the fact that it goes deeper than self-care. It's really about becoming self-aware. And so, I was in grad school studying human development, pre and perinatal psychology, really getting a sense of like what's going on in the brain and the nervous system, and who is this human that arrives in this primitive state, and how can you as the adult really meet them, really help them along this journey that they're on. And, I blasted out of grad school and I was so excited to share all this information that I was learning. And when I started teaching classes and doing my coaching and working with families, what I realized very quickly is that, yes, the information's incredible and the tools really do work, like learning how to be present with another human when they're growing is a really valuable thing to cultivate within oneself. And what became clear almost instantly was just how much I needed to be coaching the parents around their own personhood, their own way of operating in the world. Because what I learned so fast, especially understanding what I did about the brain and the nervous system, was that when you're caring for a growing person, especially in those early babyhood, toddlerhood, childhood years, their nervous system is plugged into yours. They're drawing energy to handle life from you, from their other, from their parent, from their person who they have attached to and are depending upon to help them navigate the ups and downs of this physiological and social and emotional, spiritual experience that they're having. And so it became so clear, and you and I had a conversation about this very early on, was that we as the adult people are not perpetual motion machines. We don't have unlimited energy. And the amount of energy that a child person requires is massive. And so, they're plugged into you, they're draining your battery, that's just part of the deal. They're sucking emotional juice out of you, and it depletes one's own resources that you have to recognize. I use the metaphor or the analogy of the cell phone, that thing has to be charged every day. And the more you use it, the more you have to charge it. And, it helps to have the little bits of charge, but it also needs those bigger charges. And as humans, we're similar. I mean, it's a great example because we as people, even without children, there's a lot that goes on that pulls our energy all day. We have jobs and homes and relationships and all this stuff. And then you add a child or more than one child into that. And you've got these small humans who are requiring an other's energy to stay balanced because they're going to get wobbly because of the development and they need an other. And so they're plugging into your phone and draining your battery, maybe more than you're even using it. So there's no way that you can access this really great, more, intentional way of parenting if you're not focusing on how you're gaining energy, how you're fueling yourself. And that's different for everyone. And so, yes, self-care is important because that's how we fuel, but becoming self-aware and really recognizing not just when we need fuel, but what actual fuel fuels us, because it's different for every human. That's what I want to talk about today with you.
What I love about that is that when I think back, even from the last 7 days of moments with my kids that went really, really well, like we were connected, I was present, I was really thinking through our interaction, I can see the direct correlation between my way of being, the way I brought myself to that moment, and, the outcome, what I actually produced in my language, in my body language, in my, my emotions, and all of that coming back to how well I was resourced. And, quite on the opposite side, I can see that the times that it did not go well, that I was not very well resourced. I had maybe put too much on my plate, or I hadn't quite got the sleep that I really needed. And it's such a pivotal connection to be made, and yet I don't think we often do that. We quickly just blame ourselves. Like,
right.
Those edgy, yucky reactions, it doesn't take long as parents for the guilt to set in and think, oh my gosh, why did I snap at them? And the way you're presenting this is like, oh, I know exactly why I snapped at them. I had already had 3 cups of coffee, or I was really ticked off about something that happened over a text exchange. So can you sort of draw some links between the things that we could be doing every single day and how that allows us to access our more evolved, steadier, wiser selves?
Yeah. And I mean, my number one tippy top, I did a TEDx talk about it, is literally learning how to pause. I mean, we're living in this world, and maybe it's always been this way, but especially parents, where your attention is often out and on. There's so many things to attend to, and there's more information to be gathered, and there's more emails to deal with. And it can be just this nonstop from the minute you wake up till the minute you put your head down on the pillow of on. And what I have learned because of what I've studied, and just because of watching now thousands of parents cultivate these skills, it starts with just learning how to pause, just how to stop and take the extra beat. And then maybe one little deeper of that, so if it's 1 second of just like turning the radio off in the car before your kids get in, and realizing like, oh, here I am, I am here now. Like it's that simple. If you just said that, like one breath, pause, I am here now. There's something that allows for the beginning of a learning how to settle, that I almost can't go beyond that until somebody can hear that, it is that simple. It isn't always easy. Trust me, I live this. I teach it. I have time and space, and I have to grab myself by the hand and say, okay, now it's time to stop. Now it's time to put the phone down. Now it's time to close the computer. It's like learning how to pause, whether it's for 1 second or 10 minutes or an hour or 3 hours. I don't expect people to have much more than that. But that alone, that skill of practicing the pause when you don't need it, and cultivating that skill of stopping, could be the life changer somebody needs. It could be that simple. And the reason for the pause is because there's a couple reasons. One is it allows for self-awareness. It allows for me to get a little more of a sense of, where am I? And I keep it super simple. I use the scale. Am I steady? Am I present? Am I fortified? Am I clear? Am I aware? Or am I wobbly? Am I swirling? Am I off kilter? Am I flooded with a whole bunch of different emotions? Is my mind racing? So there's no judgment. It's not anything other than when you're giving energy out and you're on, it's so easy to forget of what's going on in this mechanism, this body, this brain, this emotional system, this gut, this soul. And when we learn how to pause, not only are we able to, eventually cultivate the skill of going in and getting a sense of things. How resourced am I? Oh, I'm not resourced at all. Okay, that makes sense. I'm wobbly. Like that's the correlation. It's that clear. When I am overdone, I don't have as much ground under me. And so what do I need to be doing? And it's not about always being steady. That's not possible. I wouldn't even wish that on anyone. So the good thing we now know is the minute you turn your attention to getting a read on where you are, where one is, where I am, then it shifts. But for a whole day, one could easily never actually go take that moment and go inward. And that's what you just explained. Something else is swirling inside of us. Something got, we're wobbly. And then the young person comes in and says something in a tone that somehow pushes the button and we're gone. And we don't even know how that happened. And yet, if you had been aware of where you are in yourself, oh, I'm really off today. And being able to articulate that to your kids changes everything. Not only because one, you're naming it to tame it, as Dan Siegel says, but two, you're giving them confirmation of what they probably already know. Yeah. There's a sense that, oh, if I can just hold it together, they won't know that I'm really having a hard time. But the truth is, your people are so hooked into you, the way the nervous systems are talking and wiring together in a way, they may not say, well, Mom, it seems like you're having a really hard day. Go take a bath. I'll take care of things. No. They're just going to mirror what they're experiencing. And so they will often, what you repress, they will express. Mm. And so if you're all wobbly and scrambly and you don't name it, it's okay to be that way. You're going to get that way. And if you can say, oh my gosh, you all, I am off today and I can feel crazy mama rising up and woo, she's got a lot to say and I don't want to freak out on you, but I'm really having a hard time. That's very different than, hey, I need you to get in the car. Hey guys, we got to go. Get in the car. Either way, that's coming out. One, it's coming out with a little awareness, and one, it's coming out very unconsciously. And when it comes out unconsciously, it just feels yucky. It just feels like you've messed up, like you're doing it wrong. And that's not it at all. It's a lot and you're overdone. And so to me, practicing the pause to get a read on where am I on the wobbly to steady? Where am I on the emotion? What's my emotional weather? Is my body loose or tight? Because these people who love you are plugged in and they're going to evoke whatever's going on in there. So ask me questions. Let me know what else needs a little more clarification there.
Well, I think what I'll kind of like tease out of what you just said is that there's a re-regulating that can happen when we tune in, and that is actually a really essential human skill that we have the opportunity to model for our kids, to be able to say out loud, wow, I am having a tough day, moment, hour, whatever, and I need a second to blah, 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 right? Like, wow, what an important thing in terms of human development for us to be learning and modeling and developing right there in front of our kids.
Amazing, right? And that you just said it. So there's one thing to basically diffuse our bomb in the moment. We're going to get heated. We're going to fall off the emotional cliff. We're going to get under-resourced and we're going to react in unsavory ways at times because we're human. And it's not about doing it perfectly all the time, but there are skills that can be cultivated so that 1 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 20 times, you can catch it and you can try something different and do it a little more consciously. And not only is that going to feel better in the moment, it's also going to be modeling for those humans who do not have that built yet. So it's like learning a language. It might be that you're learning the language, you learned English. So you've been speaking English your whole life. You moved to France. You're like, oh, I have to learn how to speak French. My child is going to be living in France. So I'm going to be learning a language with them. And the language of self-regulation and self-awareness is, like I said, it's probably the best language you can give them. But it isn't learned by telling them to do it. It's learned by you living it and you doing it and making mistakes just like any other language. And so there's the pause, then there's the checking in. And, and even notice, like, so pause always, that's my number one. And then surveying, noticing what am I amidst? Like, where am I? You can sometimes go days without even looking up and out, and you're like, oh, right, here I am. And sometimes that just can settle us, just orienting to the space we're in. Oh, there I am, black couch, table, candles, kitchen. So there's the, what am I amidst? And then how am I experiencing that? Oh, wow, my kids are very wound up and I can feel my body getting tight. I can feel my voices in there going, I need this to stop. And, so there's a lot that happens inside of us between the stimulus and the response. And we were wired based on how our parents handled their stress. And some of them did that beautifully, but many of us grew up in a time where nobody was even wondering about that. We didn't talk about the nervous system or dysregulation. You just maybe flew off the handle or freaked out on your kids and then maybe said sorry, maybe didn't. So having compassion, that word again, for one's own self of like, you might be upgrading your operating system at a very fundamental level while you're helping your people develop their ways of handling life coming at them. And it's okay. It's great. It's not even just okay. It's beautiful to be learning alongside with them. But the learning is the actual doing. It's, hearing these kinds of ideas, understanding what the tools are, and then cultivating practices and actually consciously saying, I'm going to develop these muscles. So I'm a big proponent of pausing, noticing, saying out loud where I am and what I'm amidst, checking in, what's going on in my brain, what am I thinking, what am I feeling, what am I knowing? And then, if I want to kind of tune up, so there's tuning in and then there's tuning up, and that's, noticing, just maybe it's appreciating, cultivating, getting that energy of, okay, yeah, things are messy, but wow, I'm alive and I get to be with these people. And they were a dream at one point, and look at us now. And oh my goodness, like sometimes we have to kick on the mechanism that can actually see, oh, okay, be aware of what's really, I can tune to the things that are challenging. I can tune to the knots that are tangled, but I also can tune to the things that are working really well. And when I do that, I am resourcing myself. So it serves sort of double duty there. And the more I resource myself, the more I can pull energy in and fulfill me, the more I have access to a deeper knowing. And the deeper knowing does know how to handle the sticky situations and untangle the knots and do the repair and maybe not fly off the handle quite as quickly. And it's like, I can't stress enough the one-to-one of resourcing and being a conscious human, a healthy partner for these people that you call your children.
I love that so much. One of the things I want to just kind of underscore about what you said, you'd mentioned about you can catch yourself. And yes, I think the more we care for ourselves, the more resourced we are, the more access we have to our self-aware. And yet we still might not catch ourselves. But you taught me this thing, gosh, over a decade ago now, this beautiful tool called a do-over. And it's like, oh, I see better and now I'm going to do better. And a do-over can happen a week later. It can happen an hour later, but it's this little reprieve or this little moment of self-forgiveness where I can see, oh, I lost myself. I lost a grip on my self-awareness in that moment. And I can go ask for a do-over. And I literally just did this in the last couple of days. We had a morning where it was like one of these like drill sergeant mornings, like, we got to go, blah, 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 blah. Like every single time I opened my mouth, it was some sort of like, we need to be moving. What are you doing? Why aren't we moving fast enough? And about halfway to school is when I did the pause. I checked in and was like, oh man, no wonder we all feel so tense and just agitated. And so I said it out loud. Wow, guys, I really did not like how I was being this morning. I just don't want to be with you guys like that in the morning. And I see it now and I'm going to do better. And I did. The next morning I got up a little earlier. I made a huge fruit plate. I got myself in a more easeful state. And so I think as a parent, we're going to probably mess up more times or maybe even just as many times as we're going to get it right.
Right.
But this idea that we always, like, the catching may not happen in the moment, and that's okay because we're always growing and evolving. And I have developed so much self-compassion through our work together, and that has served me just as much as the self-awareness. You know what I'm trying to say? Like
1,000%.
They go together so beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, they really do. And I mean, how beautifully said, because that's right. Like when we cultivate the skill of self-awareness, when we really learn how to not just notice what's going on in here, but to have compassion for just the bigness of it, the like, wow, I'm really holding a lot. Like this is a big deal to be caring for these humans and interacting all the time. And, there's the relationship, but then there's elements where you're managing other people, and that doesn't always really feel good to either party, So there's like bringing those moments of, oh, wow, like, yeah, the real self-compassion and the do-over and the repair. You've heard me say this for years, but it's not just a good, it's not like it's inevitable. One, you're going to mess up. And two, what we understand about the brain and neurology is that making the mistake and then coming back around and not saying, oh, I screwed up, but genuinely going, you know what? When I said that, that is not how I want to be. I do not want to operate that way. And I am really sorry. And next time I'd love to do it this way. Or can we get a do-over? Because wow, and more than not, and I'm sure you've experienced this, your kids sometimes don't even know what you're talking about because they've let it go because they're like, yeah, of course people make mistakes. But imagine a home where you're like, let's experiment, let's make mistakes, let's have do-overs, let's be really messy at times, and then let's reconnect, because there's gold in that. There's neurological gold. People are developing empathy and compassion as a result of their parents messing up and then coming back around and actively assessing, like, that wasn't ideal. Like, I'm doing things that I don't really want you to do. So how are you supposed to learn the new way? Like, isn't this crazy? And there's an honesty and an authenticity and a realness that creates that connection. You said it on an earlier episode, and I've really been pondering it a lot, is this idea of you're partnering with these people. We call it parenting, but you're really linking arms and you're saying, come on, I brought you in, I'm choosing to be your person, and I'm going to walk with you as you unfold. And maybe I made you, the cell and the egg and the sperm came together and gestated in your body or a partner's body or somebody else's body, but I'm not making you. I'm not making you grow. You're growing, you're unfolding, you're developing. I'm along for the ride, and I'm developing and I'm growing and I'm unfolding too. And we're all on this wild ride of life together, and it is bumpy and it is wobbly and things come out of nowhere, and learning not how to always be okay and have, just the practices that everybody can look out and go, wow, she does yoga all the time, or wow, he's still exercising or cultivating himself. That's wonderful, but that's comes out of the self-awareness of, what do I as a human need to fuel and feel fulfilled so that I can meet these humans as they're unfolding and learning what fuels and fulfills them?
Well, one of the things that makes this ride so bumpy is fear. And we're going to be getting into that in our next episode, is fear of doing this wrong, fear of I'm screwing up my kids. I can't wait to talk about that. But before we close out and head that direction, I want to make sure to point people to the resource section of your website, which is at carrieconti.com, and there'll be a link to it in the show notes. But there's a great tool that you've got there, The Essentials of Humanhood. It's cultivating self-awareness and clarity for being here now. Great tool. I'll put a link to that. But I think for signing up and getting on your mailing list so that people know what you've got coming up, because there's so many ways for people to go so much deeper with you on these things and courses that you do and offerings that you have. So I'll link to that, and people can head over and get that free resource and really just get into your orbit so they're aware of what you've got coming up.
Yeah. And I would love, thank you for that. And it's one thing to hear what I have to say. And honestly, if you take one little thing like, oh, I need to pause. Okay, great. I'm going to do that. Fantastic. And what I've known, what I know, and what I've been doing for the last 20 years is providing people with opportunities to really embody these practices. That yes, the ideas are wonderful, but a lot of it is not in our wiring because that's not how the people around us were operating. And so what I offer, I love doing this, but what I offer as a teacher, as a guide, is really learning how to live this. So I've got lots of goodies and I've got great stuff coming up. So please check that out.
Awesome. All right. It was great. It was great to be with you today, Carrie.
You too.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Not Parenting. For any resources or offerings we spoke about in the episode, remember you can head to carrieconti.com or you can click on the links in the episode show notes. Thanks for being here.